Chapter 16, Working Rageaholic. The reason I prefer the sledgehammer to the rapier, and the reason I believe in blunt, violent, confrontational forms for the presentation of my ideas, is because I see what's happening to the lives of people is not rapier-like. It is not gentle, it is not subtle, it is direct, hard, and violent. The slow violence of poverty, the slow violence of untreated disease, of unemployment, hunger, discrimination. This isn't the violence of some guy opening fire with an Uzi in a McDonald's and 40 people are dead. The real violence that goes on every day, unheard, unreported, over and over, multiplied a millionfold. And it's not sufficient to have a clever riposte, a witty song by the Capitol steps. Fa-la-la, oh dear, the killing, hey, dilly-dilly-dilly, doesn't do it for me. Fuck you cocksuckers is my approach. To the world, to the leadership. When are we going to start assassinating the right people in this country? Why is it, by the way, that the right-wing guys assassins have tried to shoot survived, like Wallace and Reagan? Don't we have any marksmen on our side? The 1990 and 1992 HBO shows were when things really gelled. 1990 was the first time that the improvement in my new strengths in writing met up solidly with my heightened political sense. One reason may have been, don't laugh, that 1990 and 88 were both shot in New Jersey. Yeah, kiss her where it smells, New Jersey. We'd finally discovered not to do HBO shows on the West Coast. California audiences just sit there trying to decide whether they're going to the beach tomorrow or Magic Mountain. Not a lot of concentrated energy in a Los Angeles audience. What Am I Doing in New Jersey in '88 was taped in the Little Theater in Union City, New Jersey. Doing it again in '90 in the State Theater in New Brunswick, New Jersey. The difference in response over the West Coast was explosive. Plus, '90 solidified the new voice with strong, disturbing pieces. One of them was Rape Can Be Funny, which was less about rape than about being told what you could and couldn't say. I opened the show by saying I wasn't sure what I could say anymore. Comedians especially were always being told there were off-limits subjects that weren't funny. I disagreed. Take rape. Is rape funny? Yes. Consider Porky Pig raping Elmer Fudd. And Porky's raping Elmer because Elmer had been coming on to him. He was asking for it. Core point. Men justify rape by claiming that if a woman's provocatively dressed, she's asking for it. Example. Those news stories where a burglar robs a house, then rapes an 81-year-old granny. Why? Her bathrobe was too tight. She was asking for it. Keeping the focus on what pricks men are proved my point that you can joke about anything, even rape. And let me tie the piece up neatly. Now I've got the feminists pissed off at me because I'm joking about rape. Feminists want to control your language, and they're not alone. They got a lot of company in this country. I'm not picking on the feminists. In fact, I got nothing against the feminists. I happen to agree with most of the feminist philosophy I've read. I agree, for instance, that for the most part, men are vain, ignorant, greedy, brutal assholes who've just about ruined this planet. I agree with the abstract that men have pushed the technology that just about has this planet in a stranglehold. Mother Earth, raped again. Guess who? Hey, she was asking for it. 1990 was a sign, looking back from the perspective of years, that jamming in New York was on its way. And when it came, on April 25, 1992, in what used to be called the Felt Forum at Madison Square Garden, in front of 6,500 people, it leaped past all the others. The train had arrived. April 1992 was just over a year after the end of the Gulf War, and patriotism was still running high. A lot of people had seen it and still saw it as a good war, even though the Pentagon lies in the run-up to it were beginning to come out. supposed Iraqi atrocities in Kuwait City fabricated by some woman from the Kuwaiti royal family, DoD satellite photos of Iraqi troops massing at the Saudi border, which actually showed empty desert. There was some risk in doing rockets and penises in the Persian Gulf on national television, but it was calculated. I went right into it, at the height of their commitment to me, and had such pace, such fire that they couldn't ignore the ideas in it. There was less an unpatriotic ring to it than a loud dissenting one. America loved war, I said. In our history, we've had a major war every 10 years. We suck at everything else, but we could bomb the shit out of any country full of brown people. Only brown people. The last white people we bombed were Germans, because they were trying to dominate the world, and that's our job. I shifted to my theory that war is just men waving their pricks at one another. The ideas came from all directions, piling on joke after joke and idea after idea, the next idea validating the previous one. There was always more shit coming. I think they were taken aback by the sheer performance of it. It wasn't quite like anything I'd ever done. By the end, they were cheering every line. The combination of laughs and ideas and imaginative flurries of language overwhelmed any resistance they might have had along the lines of, "Wait just a goddamn minute. I know someone with a boy over there." I was beginning to realize something. I had a powerful new tool for my toolkit, though I've only made sparing use of it since. Getting laughs all the time wasn't my only responsibility. My responsibility was to engage the audience's mind for 90 minutes. Get laughs, of course, dazzle them from time to time with form, craft, verbal fireworks, but above all, engage their minds. The Planet is Fine, which ended jammin', was the perfect example. Essentially, it's an essay on what I see as the futility and narrow-mindedness of environmentalism. We imagine we threaten the vastly powerful self-correcting system. Earth has survived for 4.5 billion years through far worse disasters. The planet will shuck us off like a case of the crabs. Forget about saving endangered species. We are the endangered species. The planet is fine. We are fucked up. We're going away. We'll leave some plastic bags behind, but other than that, after the Earth has absorbed them, not a single trace. From the point of view of the performer, the ever-present possibility of going in the sewer, a basically serious piece like this was a lot riskier than penises in the Persian Gulf. And in my concerts throughout the months before the garden show, it would get long, quizzical silences. But it was clear from the response at the end that they were appreciating it. There were considerable stretches when I wasn't getting laughs, but I didn't expect them. They were where there weren't any jokes. The laugh-free stretches were acceptable to me and to the audience because they were engaged, or more accurate, we were engaged. The success of Planet gave me new power, the permission to take artistic risks, as long as I kept them interested and engaged and entertained, not bringing them to laughter all the time, but sometimes to wonder. When I could see from their faces they were thinking, "Whoa, what a nice thing he did there." So long as I did that, the contract between us was fulfilled. Laughter is not the only proof of success. Boy, what a liberating recognition that was. It grew and grew during those months of testing and practice on the road. And when I got to the garden, the sheer number of people ensured that even during those quiet moments, there was audible appreciation going on. Not laughs, but some ripple of agreement, a collective, "Oh yeah." Pleasure in sheer ideas. With smaller audiences, I hadn't heard reactions like that because they were less inclined to expose themselves. But here, lost in a sea of people, they let themselves go. I thought of thought-provoking pieces, what I call value pieces, as taking the audience on a journey with me through my mind. Along the way, there are plenty of signposts and reminders of their own perceptions and things that they've assumed, heard, believed, and questioned, reinforcing those things for them and reassuring them that I'm not leading them into a cul-de-sac, that the journey is to somewhere new. And if I'm engaging them in forward movement from a familiar place to an unfamiliar place, I have to do it with marvelous language or some other attention-getting element that transfixes them and moves them along to their destination. And then we can get back to the laughing all night. When you're in front of an audience and you make them laugh at a new idea, you're guiding their whole beings for the moment. No one is ever more herself or himself than when they really laugh. Their defenses are down. It's very Zen-like, that moment. They are completely open, completely themselves. When that message hits the brain and the laugh begins, that's when new ideas can be implanted. If a new idea slips in at that moment, it has a chance to grow. So for that moment, that tiny moment, I own them. That's one of the things, maybe the most important, I seek by following this path to have that power, to be able to say, stop in your tracks and consider this. At the same time, I've had to surrender myself to that moment, and it's a communion, a genuine momentary communion, which they wouldn't have experienced without me, and I wouldn't have experienced without them. The audience was learning the range of my material, the universal shared kind of piece, but also those extended essays, mini lectures, recitations, whatever they are. And I had more and more to say. You have attitudes when you're young, but you don't have the ammunition to go with them, especially if you're self-educated and you're just trying to find out what you need to know to get through. You haven't had this overlay of other information. I was 55 when I did Jammin', already well past 50, a big turning point for a lot of guys. And I was chasing 60 when I did the next one, Back in Town. But I've found the perspective of time lends texture to your ideas. The longer you live, the richer your matrix gets, and the observations you make have more interesting information against which to be compared. The difference between what you see and what you know is richer and more full of possibilities. It's an accumulation of attitude and information that people respond to. And of course, after a certain age, you get points just for not being dead. If you've been paying attention, you'll notice there was a 4-year gap between Jammin' and Back in Town. Because, as always, there was my two-tiered personality to be reckoned with. Just when my craft and artistry and self-discovery were maturing, I started to feel the old longing to belong, to find a group I wanted to be part of. The result was 2 major diversions in the mid-90s. One good, one not so good. On my website it says, January 1994, The George Carlin Show premieres on Fox Television. Lasts 27 episodes. Lesson learned. Always check mental health of creative partner beforehand. Loved the actors. Loved the crew. Had a great time. Couldn't wait to get the fuck out of there. Canceled December 1995. For about 20 years before The George Carlin Show, I'd regularly turned down some offer to have conversations about a sitcom. I was always opposed to it, for the usual kind of showbiz cultural reasons. There was a reluctance on many levels to get involved in the worst aspects of commercialism. Fox had been coming after me for about 4 years, and I'd been turning them down. They gradually made the offer so good I had to listen. They gave me 20% of the back end and an executive producer credit. Most important, they wanted to put me with Sam Simon, whose pedigree was terrific. Taxi, Cheers, The Simpsons, Tracy Ullman. A brilliant writer and shaper of comedy. What really changed my mind was that the 1992 HBO show was a watershed. It brought me to a new artistic level, that good plateau. As far as the writing and performing, I could afford a pause, a victory lap. I was in my mid-50s. I had a great offer. There was a great writer to work with. I thought maybe I owed it to Brenda and myself to see if there was a place I could fit and do something with this form that didn't embarrass me. I didn't want to be in my 70s snarling, "I should have taken that Fox offer if only I had. Christ, look at these fucking kids today." I took the chance, and I had a great time. I never laughed so much, so often, so hard as I did with cast members Alex Rocco, Chris Rich, Tony Stark. There was a very strange, very good sense of humor on that stage. The feeling on the set was relaxed, democratic, and the crew was great. No Hollywood ego bullshit from anyone. I loved the acting process, learning the lines, shaping them. But I didn't enjoy the corporate crap. You're dealing with people who are in the business of guessing. Guessing backed up by testing. They test their guesses, and if their guesses are correct, they start second-guessing. One another, the studio, the network, everyone's at odds. The biggest problem, though, was that Sam Simon was a fucking horrible person to be around. Very, very funny, extremely bright and brilliant, but an unhappy person who treated other people poorly. There's a producer-writer in-group culture in television that isn't friendly to outsiders, especially a star who, though he's supposed to be the raison d'etre of the project, comes from another area of show business. They keep you at arm's length, keep you in the dark about certain areas. It made no difference that Jerry and I were executive producers. Sam was the showrunner, the most important person in getting the show on. Fox wasn't heavily committed to the George Carlin show. I was told the head of promotion didn't like it. We weren't getting much cooperation from on-air promotions and Fox's promotional team. Fox was not the place for me. I was incredibly happy when the show was canceled. I was frustrated that it had taken me away from my true work. I would have done my 9th HBO show in 1994, and I didn't. I had just learned finally how to do my work. This wonderful second burst of creative energy was interrupted and hurt in a way. Now I cherished it all the more for that. So Fox was part of a paring down process, getting rid of extraneous dreams and ambitions once and for all. Forget weekly television. I'd rather be sitting in a crappy motel in Wisconsin or Oregon, going through my files, making notes on the next HBO show, rolling over during the night to write down a note. That goes with the Kleenex bit for 2002. They could get me away from stand-up for a while, perhaps, if they said, "There's this wonderful movie role, you co-star, big money, great script. You play a priest, and you get to strangle 6 children. Not all in one burst, either, in 6 separate scenes, with 6 different techniques of strangulation." I'd give up a month or 2 for that. Which brings us to Shining Time Station. Shining Time Station was presented to me as an acting opportunity. At that point, Jerry and I were characterizing the kind of role I wanted as something where my eyes bulged out. I walked away from a lot of stuff because I was looking for somewhere to really stretch my eyeballs. But when the Shining Time lady, Britt Allcroft, a wonderful, creative, concerned woman, came to me about her project, I thought, hey, here's a chance to show something quite different, a side that's gentle, childlike. Plus, I took the place of Ringo Starr, who did the first season, so that made me the anti-Pete Best. It won me a whole new generation of admirers who knew nothing about George Carlin except that he was a little man in a little blue suit. When I ran into one of these kids at the airport and the parents would say, that's him, go over and say hello," the child was always completely fucking traumatized. I was out of uniform and way too big. I had to say gently, "I'm not on the island of Sodor. I'm not working today, but I am Mr. Conductor." Then that wonderful look would come on the child's face. What the fuck is going on? Now, 10 or 15 years later, some of Mr. Conductor's little fans are beginning to show up at my concerts and HBO shows to complete their education. Once, while Britt and I were talking about the show, she pointed out how the characters in Shining Time Station, Schemer, Stacy Jones, Bill Two Feathers, offered a combination of nurturing, freedom, lesson learning, chaos. Mr. Conductor didn't quite fit into any of those roles, but could be part of any of them, even chaos in his evil twin. None of them explained why he was so fascinating to children. That's what I'm about to do, so pay attention. When we're in the womb, we're in the oceanic state. We are completely part of nature. We are attached to nature, literally, physically. Everything comes through tubes. You don't have to do a goddamn thing. Everything's cool. You are at one. You are in union with nature. Then you get torn out of this fucking place, and there's pain and screaming, and the violence starts. The slapping on the ass, the acid wash, the circumcision. You're out of there, not attached, not cool, not at one with anything, and individuation starts. You are Johnny Phillips, and you are going to be a lawyer, and you're going to be just like your father, and you've got red hair, and you're going to have a temper, and a whole bunch of other shit will be true of you. You better shape up and have a goal and work for it and achieve things. Union is over. The rest of your life is spent yearning for reunion, to join the one again. We look for it and dream of finding it, but in all the wrong places, in religion, in sex, in success. Back to Mr. Conductor, I said to Britt, he's got two things combined. He's small like a child, he's childlike like a child, but he's fully developed like an adult, and he's wise like an adult. These things are joined, so there's a unity in him that is complete. I think he's fascinating to children because he's got the things children need from adults, experience and information, and gold dust. At the same time, he's totally unthreatening. He's even smaller and more powerless than they are. He's a baby adult. I loved doing Shining Time Station, but part of it was I also liked presenting a moving target. I liked the idea of people saying, well, that's nice. Now he's on Shining Time Station educating 2-year-olds. Hey, but doesn't he say cocksucker? And the virgin's bleeding from her cunt? Yeah, keeping them a bit off guard. And being on the series gave me a great line for the '99 HBO show. You are all diseased. It was a reprise of riffs I'd been doing for some time about child worship in America. Kids were getting far too much attention, and whatever people thought about kids, they had to listen to an expert. This was Mr. Conductor talking.